My name is Lisa Christine Foster. My whole life I was in secret. I would wear my mother's clothes, her makeup. I'm whole. I feel comfortable in my own skin. I don't think about what it's like to be in the wrong body 24/7. I wake up very early on a routine basis. I woke up probably about 4:30 this morning, got dressed and did my makeup. I'm a very strong person, or otherwise I wouldn't be here to this day. I had pretty much decided I'd probably be single for the rest of my life. Would you ever be interested in dating someone like me? I wasn't really looking for a relationship, it just happened. I adore him, I really do. He is really my soulmate. It truly is.
Our dog is a handful.
She pulls a lot.
Yeah, she's a puppy. She's only 1 year old.
1 year and 2 months.
And we didn't expect to have such a big dog.
And her name is Oreo.
My name is Janet Uridomo, and I am going to be 52 in October, and we live in Torrance, California.
My name is Kylee Uridomo. I'm going to be, I already turned 10 this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I go to John Adams Elementary. I am in 4th grade, and my favorite subject or class is social studies. I have a lot of friends. They're all really nice. I love pink, because pink is like cotton candy, and I like cotton candy. The princess right there, her hair is blonde and her eyes are blue, and I used to like that, but now I don't. I want her hair to look, and her face to look more like mine. I want her eyes to be brown and her hair to be brown now.
It's weird. I think if you look at us, it's sort of like split down the middle. I think I represent
everything I'm not, he is. But yeah, he was the one person I never had to tell, because he was just he got it, he understood it. Like, my twin brother understands that he doesn't have a brother. And it didn't really change our dynamic at all.
She was like, so that was the happiest moment of my life. Can you please get away?
My name is Wayne Maines. I'm Nicole and Jonas's father. My kids are who they are because of their mother. I'm married to Kylee Maines. We've been overprotective parents since day one. Kylee washed them 10 times a day and creamed them 10 times a day when they were 9 weeks old. Nicole was a little bit different than Jonas. She's had that same personality since she was a little kid. Knew who she was, innocently told us who she was.
My name is Lindsie Carlson, and I'm 70 years old. I'm the father of 3 children. I've done more than a lot of people. Not only that, I've outlived almost everybody I knew when I was young. I really feel lucky in so many ways. I got to live the American dream as a man. I worked for the same company for 37 years. I retired with a pension. I retired with health care. I can afford to live in LA. And I got to fulfill myself as a human being by changing my gender.
My name is Helen Grusd, and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, and I have been treating LGBT patients since the early 80s, even the late 70s. There is a confusion between transgenders, transvestites, cross-dressers. 0.3% of the population in the United States has been identified as transgender. So we're talking of 1 million people.
I'm just going to tell you straight out. I feel as though I'm a female. Granted, I was born with different genitalia. I have no control over that. But
I do have control over how I appear in public, and it makes me comfortable what's within inside of my head. I'm a transsexual. So although I was born with male genitalia, I felt my entire life, as far back as I can remember, that I've been female. There's different degrees of people with gender dysphoria, which is what the clinicians call it, but I'm at the most extreme level. There's also people that are transvestites. Now those people, you generally find it gratifying to just wear clothes of the opposite sex, be it male or female. Drag queen can be a person that has no gender dysphoria at all. They could be an artist that likes to present the opposite sex, but drag queen has no bearing on gender identity.
Bye, babe. Love you.
I was a heterosexual man, and I've been married twice. My first wife died. My second wife left me. A month after she left, I suddenly realized that I didn't have to be underground about cross-dressing anymore. There was nobody to hide from. I was in the house by myself, everybody was gone, ran down to Ross, bought myself a dress, got home, put the dress on, and as soon as I had the dress on, it was like the lights went on, that I was never, ever, ever not going to do this again. Anybody I was ever going to be with was going to have to understand how I felt about this, that was when I felt the most comfortable than any time. It was almost like it was a pretend world to put on guy stuff and go to work. I had gotten to a point in my head where I couldn't even look at myself after I took a shower anymore. I just stopped at my waist because that just ruined any sense of who I now felt like I was. And I have 3 kids. I insisted when I transitioned that they can still consider me their dad. I didn't become some other kind of parent or relation because I was changing my gender. So they still call me dad, and that's how I think of myself too. I'm their dad.
What? Yeah. No, if I just get 2 more,
I was born Wyatt Benjamin Maines. I'm 18 years old. I live in Portland, Maine. From the very beginning, I started trying to tell people that I didn't really feel like a boy, probably as soon as I could sort of express in words. It was a consistent display of feminine behavior. I don't feel right how I am, asking my parents, when do I get to be a girl? When do I get to, get rid of my penis? So my parents were really nervous. They didn't really know what to expect, or they didn't really know what transgender was.
Nicole and Jonas are adopted. We were fortunate enough to be able to adopt the babies from birth. Her birth name was Wyatt Benjamin. There was a time when I didn't want to say Nicole, but now it's very difficult to even say Wyatt Benjamin.
For a long time when I was little, and I was like, I'm a girl, I'm a girl, I'm a girl. My dad didn't really get it at first though. When he found out he was gonna have twins, he was like, 2 baseball gloves, 2, rifles, and, we were gonna go play football and baseball and go hunting. And I didn't really want to do any of that.
Can I talk about how your wedding? Can I talk about that? My parents have met on a fishing boat.
We all kind of fished together. So that's where I first met him. So
They
we
started dating.
And lo and behold, one day, I ended up pregnant. Through the test that we had to have, the baby inside of me had a penis. So because of that, we assumed we were having a boy. Everything looked perfect, and we had this perfect little baby that came out on February 15th.
2006 at 8:06 p.m. I started wanting to be like that when I was 3 or 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Liking girl dresses and stuff.
I think the very first time I saw anything was somebody gave me a trunk, and it had like ballerina outfits in it, like a top and a skirt. And I was supposed to give it to a girlfriend of mine, but Kai happened to open it and saw it was inside and then wanted to try it on.
How old was I?
1.5 years, because I have pictures of you in this, because we thought it was funny and laughing, and we had no idea this was the start of a whole new world. So she didn't let us give those things away. We kept those. We just started noticing that everything she gravitated towards was the pink.
When I was at preschool, okay, you tell. I don't like this part.
Why?
I just
Oh,
don't.
preschool, they have dress-up days, and they'd have girl clothes, and then they'd have boy clothes, costumes and whatnot. And Kai would always be wearing a dress. So every time we'd come and pick up Kai from school, we would say, is this normal that our child is always in a dress?
They thought it was a phase.
And yeah, they thought it was a phase. Oh, it's a phase. All kids experiment things and
with
try.
different types of clothing.
And then Kai, whenever we took her shopping, she'd always gravitate to the girls section. And I think we owned every Disney princess dress that was ever made.
Nope.
Almost.
My birth name was Ronald. We call it our dead name, but I've always felt female. 3 years old is my earliest memory. I remember trying makeup on in my mother's bathroom. I've had some really dark places. I'm not saying that my life has been a bed of roses. It's been difficult, but he came into my life and changed all that. When I first met him, I was very intrigued, and I would definitely want to get to know him a lot better.
When I saw her, I just like, wow, I need to get to know this person. She looks like someone I really want to know, and that was the beginning. And I knew that we were going to be friends, and I was hoping that we could be a little bit more, and well, I kind of got my wish.
The most obvious thing that we both have very much in common is we're both transgendered.
I was assigned female at birth. I'm a transgender man. My name CJ is the initials of my dead name. My dead name was Kylee Jolene Foster. I'm 41 and I'm a special ed teacher at a local high school.
It is much harder for those who transition at an older age. These are people that knew when they were younger that they were either male or females trapped in the wrong body. But because of the culture, because of the fear of rejection from their parents, they hid that. They've missed out on the treatments that would have made it easier for them to transition. They've missed out on a lot of their life.
For most of my life, I was really my own worst enemy. I had so much self-hatred and disrespect for myself. It was just so confusing. Nobody else would have thought or would have treated me the way I was treating myself. I was born a little boy named Spencer Anton Carlson way back at the end of the Second World War. I was just a little boy, growing up a little boy. It never occurred to me that anything might be wrong with that. And it wasn't until I was 11 years old, the first time I saw photos of women in a photography magazine, and I would imagine that I was the model. I didn't find that weird, but I was just blown away by how beautiful these women were. I had just never, ever seen anything like that. But I was really aware of this stunning sense of beauty that I just couldn't even imagine people like human beings were able to be. And that left a real strong impression on me as I got older.
As a kid growing up, I was very much a tomboy, jeans and t-shirts. My mom couldn't get me in a dress. And I remember maybe around 7 or 8 years old, someone asked me very aggressively if I wanted to be a boy. The way they asked me, I knew that the answer was no. As if you want to be a boy, we'll take you to the hospital and they'll make you a boy. And inside I was just like, they can do that? I didn't know they could do that. And inside I was screaming, yes, yes, that's what I want. But of course the answer was no. So I put it in a box for a very long time. You know, I knew at 12 years old that that's where I was, but I knew that it wasn't okay.
Back in the day when I was younger, it wasn't something that was talked about. I just knew I had these feelings of femininity. But it did take all these years of life for me to get to the point where I felt it was okay for me to transition. I do really envy our young folks today that have the opportunity to transition at a much earlier age.
It would have been much easier if I could have transitioned as a young child.
Someone in first grade called child services on me. They reported me. They said that I was an older parent and that I wanted a girl. Because I had a boy, I was forcing this child to be my girl. And this child was very depressed and upset.
And I was not depressed.
And they have to come and do a home inspection.
It was scary.
Yeah. And we only had a few hours to meet. And I brought her home, and then the social worker came in. She said Kylee was a 6-year-old cross-dresser. So if that's why she walked away with it, she walked away with it. At least she saw that this child was loved. I wasn't forcing this on this child. It took 3 hours, but we convinced her that we weren't crazy.
Well, you can't be crazy.
And they promised that if anybody ever called again, they would see that they had already come and addressed the situation. So it went away.
You got to get over your own fears, obviously, and that was the biggest challenge for me. But I never backed away from trying. Even when I did the wrong things, I thought I was doing the right thing because I loved my child and my kids. Because it's not just about Nicole; it's about Jonas too. I was really ashamed that my son wanted to wear a dress. And you got to remember, we were the first family kind of to go through this. We had counselors and specialists telling us 2 different things.
My dad didn't really get it at first. I think the difference between he and my mother was that he had a lot more expectations for what my brother and I were going to be like. I'd always want to go out in dresses and everything, and it was very like me versus him, like him telling me, no, you can't wear this, you can't do this, and me just not understanding why. Like, why can't I wear a dress? Why can't I go out? Like, Jonas gets to wear whatever he wants to, why can't I?
Having Nicole as my sister and going on this journey with her, it feels like, you know, that most important thing in your life. It's such a powerful and moving story.
There's one point my dad talks about it. He goes, listen, whatever you gotta do to protect your sister, you have to do it. I can tell that Dad is really serious, so this must be a really serious thing. I was very, very overbearing, to the point of like, you crossing the street. And I'd be like walking behind you and I'd be like,
really?
Yeah, I'd be like really nervous about, like when you were out in a crowd of people, I would always be so nervous.
Being a twin brother and being trans is definitely something that not a lot of trans people have experienced. When we were little, and you know, he got to wear what he wanted and he got to and he felt comfortable all the time. That sucked for me. Because I was so jealous of him.
When children are identifying early as transgender, it creates such distress for them. These are children that need to have a support system immediately, and it starts with the parents, it starts with the family.
When you have a transgender child, or any child that has special needs, it can be really challenging. There was a time in the beginning, when I wasn't on board, that I grieved, and a lot of people go through that you lost a son, and then over time, and even Jonas helped me with that, you realize you never had 2 sons and you didn't lose anybody. You never know what you're going to get in your family. You know, everybody's got some troubles, and being transgender doesn't have to be trouble. How can a 3-year-old know who they are? Well, you knew who you were, and they aren't trying to, there's no agendas, they're just trying to be who they are. And you have to watch. It's not just listening. If you watch from age 3, you'll see signs. It doesn't mean they're all going to be transgender. They're just experimenting. But Nicole was very, very persistent in every way of who she was, and she's never wavered.
My mom knew that a lot of people wouldn't understand this and that a lot of people weren't going to be accepting. So my mother decided that, you know, at the very least, that I would always be accepted and have a safe place to come back to in her home.
When Kai would see her friend down the street in a two-piece bathing suit and Kai was in swimming trunks, it'd be, why can't I have that bathing suit? And be sad. And I'd say, well, you can. And then I'd see me at, you know, a store in the clearance section in the girls area buying a two-piece bathing suit thinking, I'm buying this for my son, this is weird. And then bring home, but then you'd watch this smile when this kid got the bathing suit and put it on and showed it off, and it was just like such a different child. And it was like, well, okay, is it bad that, you know, this kid wants to wear these things? No, not really. And even my husband, Dave, he's such an easygoing dad, and he just loves us so much. I would get a phone call, and he'd say, I'm at, you know, a certain store, and they have these skirts. What size is she wearing now? And I'm like, okay, she's in a 4 or 5. Okay, and then he'd come home with a skirt for her. Dave is a typical Japanese man who doesn't say a lot of things. He just shows it.
I got cookies.
I remember going out to dinner one night with him, and I'm like, don't you worry about all these things that we're going through and what our future's going to be? And he's like, no. And I'm like, but why not? And he goes, because you're going to take care of it. And it's true. I mean, you're the mama bear. I mean, you're the one who's going to protect your cub and take care of it. And I think that's what I do. And Dave just trusts me.
Okay, let's go.
We kind of tag team and work together to make sure we've got a healthy girl growing up. More important than anything is our happiness. We put that first above anything. There's that middle ground sometimes, and every parent talks about it, about losing your child that you gave birth to. And you know what? You're allowed to be sad for that. But that's not your life. That's her life. And you have to move forward. And you have to support this person, because if you keep mourning the past, this child's not going to be happy.
Before there's medical intervention, which they only recommend at puberty, in order to allow these children to be who they are and to feel connected with themselves, they have social transitions.
When I was little, I always thought everyone else was like a real girl. So I was jealous of like real girls. Why couldn't I be a real girl? And it really sucked. In first grade, I really wanted to, you know, present as me. And so, you know, we'd worked with our school in Orono, and we decided to do a gradual transition, which would be easier for all the students. You know, ease them into it and also ease me into it. Take it one step at a time. It started in first grade. I wore pink, then I grew my hair out, started wearing girls' clothes. Fourth grade, I started, you know, playing a little bit around with different names. Of course, my teacher didn't love that because, you know, every folder was a different name. She was like, she basically sat me down once and was like, I really need you to just write Wyatt because I have no idea whose folder this is.
When Kai went to school,
the rules were if you were a boy, you had to keep your hair above collar, right, or above shoulder.
Above your ear and above your collar.
Your hair had to be like short, like this.
They were allowing her to dress like a girl at that point.
But they weren't allowing me to grow my hair out.
That's just one thing they just stuck to. And so we couldn't really fight it.
It's just hair. it's just hair. Why does hair matter so much?
Kai started to grow out her hair finally after we decided, when our old school said no to our asking if they could change the policy about maybe just gender conforming kids. And I realized how important that was to her. And at that point in time, she was only 6, so we went to our local public school because here she can be who she wants to be, and there's a law that protects her.
I love to brush my hair.
I was kind of a late bloomer with adolescence. It wasn't until I was about 15. One day, whatever the reason was, I realized that my mom had a girdle just like this girdle that this woman was wearing in the catalog, and I got it into my head that I wanted to try it on. I went into the bedroom and I went through her drawers and I found it. And then I tried to put it on, which turned out to be much more difficult than I thought it was going to be, because it had all these hooks up the side. It was very, very difficult to get all these hooks put together, which I didn't expect. I don't know what I thought was going to happen, and I battled for about 15 minutes trying to figure out how to get this thing on. And finally I did. There was a mirror on the dresser in the room, and I stepped over in front of the mirror, and I saw myself with a feminine shape. I realized that I feel so much better dressed up by myself than I ever do in my normal, real life. This kind of reinforced the sense that I was really not quite mentally a man. I wasn't sure what I was, but whatever I was, this was how I began to feel. This really, really scary part at that particular time was that I didn't know what to think of myself. Here I was, this young man wearing his mother's underwear, which was pretty creepy. And I just felt utterly disgusted with myself. And it was sort of like I was cursed with this from that day forward.
My feelings started when I was very young. I did come out to my mother at about 21 or somewhere thereabouts. I went to her and I said, "Mom, I feel like I'm female." And she says, "Yes, I know." And it pretty well shocked me because I thought it was a big secret. And I asked her, "How long have you known?" And she said, "Always." So that was my connection with my mother. She's passed on quite some years ago now, so unfortunately I don't get to interact with her and have her help me through my transition now. But it took many years I tried hormones off and on, tried getting into different organizations to help me understand my feelings, saw therapists.
When I was 19, I came out as a lesbian. I wasn't sure that I was a man, but I knew that I wasn't a woman. I knew I loved women. I didn't understand at that time that I was actually a man that loved women, so I thought that since I was living as a woman, I must be a lesbian.
I became a woman. I wasn't born one. It became over the next 5 years, 10 years, for me to really actually kind of mentally transition into a space where I felt more like a woman. I didn't have breasts, I didn't have all of the stuff. But in my mind, I sort of had it. It's hard to say whether there was really an element of confusion while I was sharing these two different worlds in a way, where I was the guy at work during the day and felt like that was my job, and I knew that. And bit by bit, I began to, I wanted to have pierced ears, so I got both ears pierced. I started letting my hair grow. There were little visible clues that I was starting to kind of release into the world, and it felt good.
I started my transition in the middle of July of 2013. I was 53 years old. My name that I've chosen to live by the rest of my days is Lisa, and I chose that at a very young age. I don't even know where it came from. The process of getting all that changed isn't all that difficult, actually. I went through an online thing that helped me get all the documents right, and I submitted them, and then I went to court and stood before a judge, and bam, that's your name now. And with the help of my husband, I got my birth certificate changed as well. And my Social Security followed right behind that. That was even easier. Once you have your birth certificate and all that, everything falls in line, and the DMV just went right along with everything else. So every document that I have now reflects who I truly am. I'm very comfortable who I am today. I have no problems interacting with society as a woman, and I feel very comfortable in who I am now.
I decided that, you know what, it's time. We're going to change her name and we're going to change her gender. A lot of her paperwork that comes home from school still says Kyle. And some of the things still say male because that's what's on the birth certificate, and you can't change any of that unless you legally get it done. So I told Dave, we're gonna go forward, and he said, okay. The morning of court, we were all pretty nervous, and it's really very personal and very private. They asked us to come up, and the judge, it was just us and the judge, and nobody else in the room. He said, okay, I want you to state your name, each of you. And so I said, okay, I'm Janet Uridomo, and I'm the mother, and then Kai's next to me, and then there's Dave. And so Kai, she goes, I'm Kai, and he goes, oh, minors don't have to state it, your name, unless you want to. And then she looks at me and she says, what do I say? And I said, you say Kyle for the very last time.
When I had to say Kyle, I was like, I had to say this. I had to.
Mm-hmm. And then he looked at her, the judge said, I bet you would like to just say Kylee. And she said, yep. And he said, let's make that happen.
Then I was happy.
She danced as we left the courtroom. She literally twirled and danced all the way to the elevators because she was so happy.
At about 12 or 13, consider suppressing sexual maturation.
Kids these days can go on hormone blockers pre-puberty and then begin hormones at puberty. I knew when I was young, so to be able to go on hormone blockers would have been amazing.
When you start talking about hormone blockers and cross-hormone therapy, and that's scary stuff.
It was a struggle. I would be on the internet for hours. My son likes to wear pink. My son likes to wear dresses. What does all this mean? It all kind of led to transgender. So she actually went to see a specialist in December at the Children's Hospital. Because,
Dr. Olson!
Yeah, she's an awesome doctor. And we know that we have a lot of things that are going to happen in the future with puberty and hormone therapy. So I wanted to understand more, and we went as a family and we listened to a lot of things that will happen to her body. And basically it's trying to figure out when puberty is going to start. And when puberty starts, there's choices.
Puberty blockers. You can get shots every 3 months, or you can get an implant that will last 2 years, and every 2 years you'd have to go back, right? To get a new one. I want the implant. I don't like shots. So for the puberty blockers, they just cut you open and then they stick it in you, right? And then they sew you up.
Yep.
But you have to they use laughing gas.
And basically, when you go through puberty, sometimes you get hair under your arms or on your face,
and the puberty blockers will block that.
Yeah, I'm surprised she knows this much because her whole time, her head was down and her crocodile tears were just dropping. When we left, I think the hardest part for me was when we got in the elevator and she said, "Why can't I just be normal?" And I knew at that point too that was my daughter now, not my son. And yeah. But why does she have to have things done to her body? right? So it is hard. It's hard, but it doesn't matter. We're gonna get through it, and she's just gonna be our forever beautiful daughter, and it'll be okay.
The treatment for it was so relieving because it felt like people were actually finally doing something to help me. It didn't feel like I was on my own anymore. And it finally felt like, oh my God, someone had heard me. People are taking steps to help me. And it just felt really good to have, that support.
If these kids don't get the medical care they need, there's still a good chance they're not going to be around. Because if Nicole knew every day she was going to look and sound like Jonas, I don't think she'd be here. Because when you're 12, 13, 14 years old, looking down the road, you see no hope at all.
It's almost half of transgender youth will, at the very least, attempt suicide. I think if you're going to be a parent, you need to be prepared for any of these possibilities. It's crazy to think about that, just if you'd been in a different situation with somebody different, you could have done, if I just had different parents, I could have done all the same things, but it could have ended up completely differently. I might not even be here. It makes me realize how privileged I am. It makes me realize how lucky I am to have my parents.
We were scared to death. It's just a lot of painful stuff. Not only does it wear you down mentally, but financially too. We spent everything we had. Kylee would say, don't worry about it, we were poor when we started. But I'm a kid from a poor family, so the shot was $1,600 once a month. Luckily for her, our family, we could swing it. We gave up some things, but there's families all over the country that can barely pay their mortgage, let alone come up with another $1,600 to save their kid's life and delay puberty. And it's so critical.
Yeah, I worry about puberty blocking and hormone therapy, and will she want reassignment surgery at 18? Will she hate her body in the next year and get depressed, want to hurt herself? There's so many kids out there that do those things. And I hope that we love her enough that she won't feel that way, ever. It's scary, but I don't want to show her that. I mean, that's why at night she doesn't see when I'm thinking of those things, or when I cry driving to work every morning, because I'm just so worried about her. But in front of her, I'm her rock. I'm not going to let her know that she has anything to worry about. All she needs to worry about is being happy in who she is right now. And this kid loves to sing, and she sings all the time, every day, in the bath, wherever. And I know one day if she stops singing, there's something wrong.
My name is Dr. Thomas Satterwhite. I always knew that I wanted to work with an underserved community, and I always felt that the transgender community was the most underserved. Our practice focuses exclusively on taking care of the transgender community. Now, we have 4 surgeons in our practice, and we cover the full spectrum of surgical services for both trans men and trans women. The most appropriate way of referring to these operations as gender confirmation surgery. I don't think it's inappropriate to say gender reassignment, but gender confirmation surgery is the most appropriate way, because we're not really changing the patient's gender. What we're doing is changing the body to match their genders.
I was born with female genitalia, and I lived with that for 41 and 363 days. I never wanted breasts. It was the worst thing at that time, and then getting my period was the worst thing in the world. I'm halfway through all my surgeries. I've had top surgery, I've had a hysterectomy, and I am planning now for lower surgery in this coming June. Chest surgery wasn't gonna be enough for me. The dysphoria was really starting to get to me in the gym, especially in the locker room, when, guys go in the shower and I'd have to leave my underwear on with my packer. There was a couple of times my packer fell out, and Thank goodness there was no one around, because it was like while I was in the locker room, but it's a scary thing, you know, to have that fall out, and it's like to really have someone maybe realize that you are not who you are saying that you are. I go to use the restroom and I can't urinate the way I want to. And even in lovemaking, I do get some dysphoria when, you know, it's like I can't be with my wife the way I feel like I was meant to be. So hopefully after the surgery, that will go away.
I've looked at the videos and the explanation of what he has to go through, and I'm very, very concerned but supportive. I've told him from the very beginning that I love him, and his anatomy is no part of my love for him. It's just something to make him whole, and I don't see it being any different after surgery other than he will be more comfortable with himself.
The surgery is going to be about 8 hours, and there will be 2 surgeries. One will be the initial surgery to create the phallus, and then 9 months later there'll be another surgery to insert a rod so that I can have an erection. Lower surgery for me, I think, is going to extend our love life for sure. Right now it's wonderful as it is, but it's definitely going to make it more intense and I think more intimate for that to be able to happen.
For transgender men and boys, the biggest procedure that I do is top surgery or chest reconstruction, so mastectomies. Another operation that is performed is phalloplasties, which is creating penises. Very long, very complicated operation. The number one operation that I perform is called vaginoplasty. This is for male to female patients, or referred to as bottom surgery, but it's essentially turning the penis into a vagina.
I had been saving for quite a few years for this surgery because I knew it was quite expensive. So I had all the money saved, and the surgery is at least for my gender, is much more improved. You can look at comparison pictures. You could put all of our anatomy in a lineup, and I don't think you could pick out a trans woman's from a cis woman. Cis being a person born of that gender. You could not pick out their genitalia different, I don't think.
Cost should not be ideally an issue for patients. There are several states where insurance is mandated to provide transgender benefits, and California is one of them. Many of our patients, understandably, are not from necessarily the most robust socioeconomic background, just given a lot of the difficult things that have gone on in their lives. And so it is very cost prohibitive for these patients to move forward.
She was very happy coming out of surgery. She's like, "It's done?" I'm like, "Yeah, babe, it's done. You're all."
I go, "What?"
You are all female now. You're good. My surgery is coming up. They're taking my arm to make my penis. And if I need to go to physical therapy, I will, to get range of motion back, because that is a concern that the skin heals directly onto the muscle, and then you don't have the flexibility and the movement. We're leaving in June, so my first pre-op is on the 9th, so we have to be there by the 8th.
You sure that's early enough? We don't have to leave by the 7th?
No, I think we should leave the 8th.
We have to be there how long, honey?
About a month. So there's my first post-op, and then July 7th is my last post-op, so I
we'll
think
probably come home the 8th or 9th or something like that.
Maybe that weekend.
Weekend of the 9th and 10th.
Maybe. I go back to school on the 15th, so I'll be exactly 8 weeks post-op on the 13th.
You think you have enough recovery time by then?
I hope so.
I do too, baby.
It'll be good.
I just care about you.
I know. It'll be good. There's going to be a pretty gnarly scar. It'll take a few years to heal. I know that there's dressings that'll need to be changed on the arm. I have to keep everything in the groin area dry. The more moisture gets in there, the faster the sutures will dissolve, which could cause complications, like fistulas, which is a hole that goes from the inside to the outside, and then I could end up having, peeing through a hole instead of where it's supposed to go.
Our day started early and began to get ourselves together so that we could make the trip to San Rafael. We were both a bit stressed and we had a little bit of a snippet, but no big deal. This operation, which for him is female to male, to say it's difficult is an understatement. For the men, it's quite an undertaking. I'm very, very, I don't know the right word, but I'm uneasy, but I understand the risks, and I understand this doctor is very good, so he's in the best hands he can be in.
I think she's more worried about things than I am, but I'm very comforted by the fact that she is here with me. She's going to help take care of me.
There's a lot of things that could go wrong, but let's hope for the best.
Deciding to have surgery and then just going through these steps to get surgery was the hardest thing I had to do in my life.
It was the scariest 2 weeks of Kylee and my life. It is still major elective surgery, and you're always thinking, like, are we ready to have our kid go under the knife? Not ready. We were ready for her to have the reassignment surgery because we watched this kid grow and we knew where she was going, and it was the right thing to do. In the end, it's pretty cool, actually. It's just, it doesn't have to be that hard.
I feel like I said earlier, I felt like I'd finished a race. I was like, I sort of feel like I'd been going through this whole process and I came out the other side and I'm feeling good. Obviously, it's like scary, but yeah, the dysphoria is gone.
Yeah, in terms of the age requirement for patients, there isn't actually a minimum age. We do operate on patients as young as 16. They must get 2 letters from mental health therapists. One of them has to be either a psychiatrist or a psychologist attesting to the fact that they do have gender dysphoria. For chest operations, we've operated on kids as young as 13 who are truly dysphoric, who've been binding, and it's causing a lot of musculoskeletal problems, a lot of lung problems. I've certainly met patients who are in their 20s and 30s who I didn't feel had the maturity to move forward, and I meet 13-year-olds who I feel are exquisitely mature and I feel comfortable moving forward.
At about 6:30 in the morning, we go to the hospital in San Francisco. CJ will be prepped for surgery, and the surgery's quite long, and I'll be pacing like mad. And then after the surgery, we'll be in the hospital for about 5 days. And then after that, we'll come home to the hotel here, which is going to be our home for the next month. He has 3 follow-up visits that he has to do, so that's why we're going to be here for such a long time.
I will not be allowed to move out of bed for 4 days because they want the graft to heal and they want everything to stay still. So, I'll be able to move my arms, but as far as my legs, everything else has to stay totally still so that it can heal. Because, you're putting something on the body and sewing it to the body. You don't want it falling off. So, when I do get out of bed, they'll be putting my phallus in a sling and holding it up so that it doesn't hang down.
It's a huge thing for him.
I think it's going to hit me when I get to the appointment. It's going to really hit me that, oh my God, this is happening.
We do have our patients stay in the hospital for at least 3 days, 3 to 5 days. There's a risk of developing what's called a fistula, where you get an unnatural connection, about a 1% chance of that happening. It can be disastrous for a patient if that does happen.
When I made the decision to transition, the biggest part of that was making an appointment with a surgeon. I didn't want to spend a lot of money, but I didn't want to exactly go cut rate either. So I started reading this website, and there was this new guy, he'd been doing it for about 4 years in Thailand. So I flew to Thailand, and the way the surgery works is they take the penile and scrotal skin and use that to line the neovagina. Well, I never had a really big penis to begin with. What are you going to do? You got what you got, right? You are who you are. Though the day before, I really wanted to feel something, just to feel something about it. And it was like, good riddance. I'm done with this, But I knew this was like the end. I'm finally at the end of wherever I was going. I'm here at last. It was like my penis and testicles had done their job. They'd done their duty. I had kids to show for it. So the whole trip was $9,200. One of the things that I noticed while I was in Thailand There were other people there in the hotel as well, and I met them from time to time when I go down to dinner. And it turned out that everybody was having breast enhancement, facial reconstruction, and I just didn't want to do all of that. I didn't mind getting rid of stuff, but I didn't want to add anything. Just about the only downside of the surgery was I had my Adam's apple shaved. And that was the only unfortunate part that happened there, was that my vocal cords were damaged as a consequence. And I can't pitch my voice up high enough to really simulate a woman's voice. So I tried for a long time. I tried to really pitch it way up, and it's just, I can't get it higher. This is about as high as it gets, and this is work to make it do this. And I finally thought, I don't want to work anymore. If I'm just going to be who I am and I'm not going to care what anybody thinks, I'm just going to use my voice and not worry about it anymore.
Waking up from surgery, I was pretty groggy. I don't remember a whole lot. Things were very fuzzy. I know I did look down and see that I had a penis, and that was really cool. It was like, oh my God, there it is. In the beginning, there was a lot of pain. Not so much of the arm, but of the leg, and then obviously the groin area.
I was kind of helpless, to be perfectly frank. This type of surgery, there's not a lot of things I can do. I helped him bathe, of course. Every day we would have to remove the old bandages and apply this, what he called zero form, which is an impregnated gauze. But other than that, there wasn't much else I could do.
I still had the suprapubic catheter in my stomach, and it was very uncomfortable and very painful. And I have a fistula, and I had a urinary tract infection.
I think the operation in and of itself is the easiest part. I think the post-operative recovery requires a lot of care and patience, and I think it can take a huge mental and physical toll for patients.
The worst is definitely behind me. It's been tough. I'm not going to lie to you, it's been tough. There have been mornings where I just woke up and I was just like, I wish that just could be done with. I just want to be back to normal. Now I'm having to do things differently. You know, I had to deal with the body betrayal, but now I have a new member of my body. And, you know, cis guys grow up and they've got this thing between their legs and they just learn how to adjust to it. You know, it grows with them. I went from 0 to man size overnight.
There is a lot of gender diversity amongst all of us. We know today that gender is much more fluid, that it fits within a spectrum. We have to be much more attuned to people's differences and celebrate them and all the different recipes that go into creating one person.
It's always gonna be hard because it feels like you're gonna have this different struggle. Like you might walk the same path of life, but you're in a different lane from everybody else.
When I saw her transition, it was a tremendous experience for me and a growth for me as a father.
If I could be a woman, if I could go back and be born one, I would prefer that. But I wasn't, and I'm not. I would never be a woman. But I would be whatever I could be that would get me as close to being a woman as I could get.
Wow, this is a whole different life than I thought I was ever going to have, but I wouldn't change it for the world. It was the best thing we did.
I don't remember what it's like to be male. To be perfectly frank, I've been preparing myself for this for many years, and it all feels normal to me now. I look in the mirror and I see the person that I've always felt I was in my head. And I think most transgendered individuals would agree with me that we just want to be loved and understood to the best of your ability, that we're living the way we have to survive. This isn't a choice.